Hey everyone, welcome back to Firsthand Globetrotting. In my last few videos, I've been showing you around the all-inclusive Barcelo Maya Grand Resort in the Riviera Maya, Mexico. It's 6 hotels that together are bigger than some towns, and it has enough room for thousands of guests. I've been doing my best to show you everything the resort has to offer, but there's been a lot to talk about. In part 1, I told you where the resort is, what the different hotels look like, and took you on a tour of my room. Part 2 was about the huge pools that each hotel has and the mile-long, beautiful sandy beach with incredible blue water. In part 3, I showed you all of the a la carte restaurants, buffets, and beach grills that you can eat at. Part 4 was about the nightlife, live entertainment, and bars that the resort has to keep you having fun. I mentioned that the resort feels like its own little town, and in part 5 I show you some of the interesting places you'll find, like a casino and bowling alley. In part 6, I show you some of my favorite things to do at the beach, and talk about some of the extra cost adventure activities that you can do here. But if you'd like to explore areas outside of the resort, I talk about some of the great excursions and day trips in part 7. Links to all of those other parts are down in the video description. This resort has so much to cover, so if you watch all 7 of these videos, it's over 2 hours long. But if you don't want to hear me talk that long or get that much detail, in this video I'll give you a nice short summary of what I liked and didn't like about the Barcelo Maya. And if even this video is too long, I'll start with some of the most important questions right away. First, did I enjoy my vacation at the Barcelo Maya Grand? I definitely did. From all the research I did before booking this trip, it completely met my expectations and I had a fantastic time. Second, would I recommend the Barcelo Maya Grand to my friends and family? I would for sure, and I actually have recommended it to a few people already. Third, would I come back to the Barcelo Maya Grand again? I'm not someone who goes to all-inclusive resorts very often, and have never been to the Riviera Maya before, but if I came back, I would definitely like to stay here again. I had a great time staying at the Barcelo Maya Colonial, but I'd probably look into booking the Palace or Riviera hotels just to give myself a different experience and to see some of the higher-end areas of the resort. Okay, so now that you know that I really liked it and had a great time, I'll go into some more detail about what I liked and didn't like about my stay. But keep in mind that a lot of these things are personal preferences, so I realize that some of you may look at the things that I list as strengths and consider them weaknesses, and may really like some of the things that I wasn't wild about. I'll start with the things I didn't like, since that's a much shorter list. My biggest problem was the Wi-Fi at the resort. And honestly, if Wi-Fi was my biggest issue, then I can't really complain about much. To start, it wasn't free, which is a red flag for me at any hotel, let alone an all-inclusive. What made it worse for me was that the quality of Wi-Fi was really bad and barely worked most of the time. I've heard other people say they had no problems with the Wi-Fi, so maybe the equipment just wasn't working when I was there. The second thing I found to be a weakness was the number of a la carte dinners you get. Don't get me wrong, the buffet food was perfectly fine and they did a great job switching it up with all of the different theme nights, but I'm someone who always prefers a regular restaurant to a buffet. You can pay extra to get one of the premium rooms that includes unlimited a la carte dinners, but most of us who stay there are only going to get a few of them. So if you're someone who really likes having good dinners every night and ordering off a menu, you won't get to do that every day. The third weakness of the resort is the late night entertainment. Most things wrap up around 9:30 or 10 at night, so if you're looking to party all night long, you may not get what you're hoping for here. I found that as soon as the live shows finished, things really quieted down. Even the places that were open later, like the nightclub, were almost empty the few times I went inside of them. Of course, if you're someone who goes to bed early, then this won't be something you care about. And just because the resort quiets down doesn't mean you can't make your own fun as late as you want to. The fourth weakness of the resort is more of a blessing and a curse, the location of the Barcelo Maya. It's out along the Riviera Maya, so it's mostly out on its own without too much within walking distance. That's great because it's a huge, private resort that's always quiet and not very busy and perfectly maintained, and security is never really a concern. But that also means that if you want to go out and explore a city, or go to a local restaurant, or experience some nightlife, you need to take a 30-minute taxi ride into Playa del Carmen. I'm an explorer at heart, so there were a few times when I wished I could just walk out the front gate and be in a Mexican city within a few minutes. But if you just want to stay at the resort, then the location is perfect. The last weakness of the resort is the number of extra cost activities they have. They have bowling, an arcade, dolphins, an aerial park, a haunted house, a skating rink, a water park, a surf rider, and a few other things around the resort that will cost you extra if you want to enjoy them. These are all things most other resorts don't have, so I realize they're purely bonuses in case you want to do them. I had a great trip without doing any of these and just sticking with the free stuff. But it just seemed like the resort was full of things that would cost you extra. I did my research before I came and I knew what was included and what would cost more, but I could see it being really confusing for people looking at the hotel website and trying to keep track of what things are part of the all-inclusive package and what things aren't and how much things cost and all of that. As you can see, the things I didn't like were all pretty minor and none of them were deal breakers. There was so much that I liked about the resort and it more than made up for the negatives. The thing that I liked the most about the resort was the incredible staff. Every staff member, no matter what their job at the resort, were always so nice and friendly to me every time I saw them. Even little things like smiling and saying hola every time they'd pass me in the hallways. This included the front desk staff and the cleaning staff and the bartenders and the maintenance people and the resort servers and everyone else that worked there. They all seem to work so hard to make everyone's vacations great, and I thought that was such a huge plus for the resort. My second favorite thing about the resort was the beach. To start, you have over a mile of beautiful, private sandy beach to enjoy. This alone was such a huge perk of staying here. And since it's so long and private, you don't have to worry about trying to find a place to sit or vendors constantly bothering you trying to sell you things. Especially when I saw the busy and congested beach in Playa del Carmen, I really appreciated how calm and beautiful the Barcelo Maya's beach is. As someone who loves snorkeling, having a mixture of perfect sandy spots and then super rocky areas was great. The sandy areas were perfect for splashing in the waves and swimming, but the rocky areas made for incredible places for the fish and other sea life to live. Being able to just walk out to my hotel's beach, put on my mask and snorkel, go out into the water, and then see all sorts of fish was such a big selling feature for me. And that isn't even counting the sea turtles. I've never been to a resort where you can snorkel with wild sea turtles right at the beach, so being able to do this at the Barcelo Maya was such a great experience. There aren't too many places in the world where you can roll out of bed, walk to the beach in a couple of minutes, spend the morning snorkeling with wild turtles, and then be back eating your breakfast a few minutes after you get out of the water. Another thing I loved about the Barcelo Maya was the design and architecture. Other than the Riviera, which had much more of a big, blocky hotel design, every other hotel was a low-rise that blended in beautifully with the surroundings. I've never stayed at the Riviera, so maybe it's great, but the look of the other 5 hotels was so much more appealing to me. It really felt like the hotels were in a Mexican jungle with trees and vegetation surrounding all of the buildings and doing a great job of hiding them from view. I found it really blended the man-made stuff into the nature and made the look of the resort so much nicer. Pretty much every building on the entire property is open air, so there's always fresh air and cool breezes flowing through. And the gardens and trees in the middle of the hotel buildings made the whole place feel even more natural. If you had asked me before I traveled to describe what I was expecting from a Riviera Maya hotel, the Barcelo Maya is nearly exactly what I would have described. The next strength of the resort is its size. It's massive. If you're looking for a smaller, more intimate resort experience, this may be more of a negative for you, but I loved having such a big resort to explore. Because the Barcelo Maya doesn't really have anything within walking distance, the big size means that you'll have a lot of things to keep you entertained without having to leave the resort all the time. Having a mall and a market and a soccer field and mini golf and a rock climbing wall and a bowling alley and so many other things made it so that there was always new and exciting things to see and try out. Every day I was able to go to a different pool or beach area at one of the other hotels and try them out to see what they were like, giving me a slightly different experience. And the size meant that there was a really good selection of food and drink choices. There were 2 huge buffets for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then 4 beach grills for lunches, and 8 a la carte restaurants for dinners. I've heard that at some resorts you only have 2 or 3 restaurant options, which could get pretty repetitive if you stay there for a week or longer. The thing about the Barcelo Maya was that it was big without feeling big. Everything is laid out over a mile of coastline, and most of the buildings are only 3 stories tall, so it does a good job of spreading out all of the guests and making sure things never feel very crowded. And even though the resort is huge, it's incredibly well maintained. They always had cleaning staff making sure everywhere was spotless, and gardeners making sure the flower beds and trees were perfect, and beach staff making sure there wasn't any seaweed on the beach. If you've been watching my videos, you know that the resort is absolutely gorgeous, and that's because the staff were working around the clock to keep it looking that way. Last but not least, I really like that the resort seemed to have local food from this region of Mexico on the menus. A lot of them aren't world-famous Mexican dishes, so the average tourist has probably never heard of them, but they still serve them at the buffets and at Mexico Lindo. I thought that was such a great perk, since I love trying local specialties wherever I go, and I was a little worried that the resort wouldn't have any options for food from the Yucatan Peninsula. Especially with big mega resorts, you tend to lose some of the local culture since it's just a bunch of tourists at the beach, so a lot of resorts look nearly identical no matter what region or country you're in. But I think the Barcelo Maya did a nice job bringing in some of the local art and food and design. You're not going to get the same experience as if you stayed in a Mexican town or city, but at least they didn't make the design of the resort really generic so that you can't even tell what Mexican state you're in. As you can see, there was a lot I liked about this resort. I'll admit, I'm not the type of person who goes to all-inclusive resorts very often. This was only the 2nd time I've been to one, and my first time going as an adult. So I'm in no way an expert on beachfront resorts, and maybe some of the things I'm listing are really obvious or every resort has them. Honestly, I wasn't really sure that I'd like the all-inclusive experience since I love to do things on my own and explore by myself. But the Barcelo Maya won me over. Almost as soon as I got there, I fell in love with the property and had a really great vacation. And probably the biggest benefit of this trip is that it reminded me how great Mexico is. I've only been to Mexico twice, but every time I've had a fantastic experience, so I really need to travel here more often. I'd definitely be up for doing another all-inclusive vacation again, and without a doubt, I'll be looking to see if Barcelo has any other nice resorts wherever I end up going. That wraps it up. I've shown you everything I learned on my trip to the Barcelo Maya Grand, and hopefully you have a good idea if it's the type of place where you want to book for your vacation. Remember, links to all of my other videos about the resort are down in the video description in case you want the full 2-hour tour. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments. While you're at it, like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. On Instagram, I'm Firsthand Globetrotting. On Twitter, I'm Firsthand Globe. Follow me on there. And don't forget, it's an incredible world out there, so pick up your passport and do some firsthand globetrotting of your own.